Hello, the video you're about to watch is about Vladimir Nabokov and the limits of authoritarianism on language. Now, the interview is with Robert Alter, one of the foremost biblical translators, but also an expert in Nabokov and the literature of the 20th century. The full interview, which goes not only into Nabokov, but the Old Testament, specifically the books of Samuel, is available in the description. And I'd like to add, we've started a Patreon. So if you'd like to see more Robert Alter talking about Nabokov in the Old Testament, that is unlikely to help. But if you'd like to see similar things, please put money into that Patreon. Thank you for your service. Enjoy.
The fact that the kids are all glued to their screens, and as many people have pointed out, the interaction between the kid and the screen has, to an alarming extent, displaced interaction with other people. It is a perfect illustration of what you say.
Mm, yeah, and uh, you focus quite a bit in the book on the mistrust that various political or authoritarian regimes have to Nabokov, not merely in the Soviet Union, but also a sort of a creeping authoritarianism in sort of American university campuses that is suspicious of aesthetics for its own sake.
Mhm.
Could you speak a bit about this? Mm.
Well, Nabokov, of course, escaped from two totalitarian regimes.
Yes.
First, after the Russian Revolution from the Soviets, and then after Hitler took power from the Nazis. So he was uh, deeply concerned for the rest of his life how an authoritarian political system could deny the freedom of individual consciousness, which for him was the bedrock of any kind of decent human existence. And the you probably know that he wrote two novels that were directly about tyrannical regimes.
Yeah, I didn't read your essays on them because I've not read the novels and I want them
Oh,
to be
okay.
a surprise when I do read them. But yes.
Yeah, Ben Sinister and Invitation to
Mm.
Behead. They're well worth reading.
Hmm. Yeah, well, after how much I enjoyed Pale Fire this time, I think I'm probably going to dive into a complete works.
Okay, I
No.
made a convert.
Yeah, and I really was
Yeah.
a convert as well. I remember being frustrated with Pale Fire the first time I read it. Even more frustrated with Lolita. There's a moment in Lolita quite late in the book where the narrator says, "Oh, I need hardly explain to the attentive reader who sat there on the chair in front of me." And I had no idea who on earth she could be. I was furious. I,
Yes, he really liked attentive readers, and of course, he liked playing chess games with his readers.
yes. Um, and yeah, why do you think? Why is why does attention to language create the kind of individual consciousness that would be not permissible in a totalitarian state? Why is that?
That's a good question. Well, I would say something like this. We are language using animals, and uh, to a large extent, consciousness expresses itself through through language, I'm sorry, in the singular. Of course, it expresses itself through dance, through music. It's not exclusive, but language seems to be quite primary. And the the ability to choose your words um, to on a very primary level, Nabokov always complained that we had crude words for red, blue, yellow, and so forth, where there were nuances of colors, and there's magenta, and there's dove blue, which you like to use, various others. Um, and authoritarianism standardizes and distorts language. There's a, a memorable essay by George Orwell, which you probably know,
Yes.
about what happens to the German language under Nazism, where, say, mass murder becomes the final solution. The word murder is
Mm.
uh, never appears, and so forth. So the the struggle. So you might say that the free use of language, using language to try to name things accurately, whether it's colors or emotions or something like love and so forth, is the ultimate bastion of freedom against totalitarianism, according to Nabokov.
Mm. It's quite interesting to contrast him to George Orwell, whose prose style is quite austere.
Yes, it is.
He said good prose is like a window pane. When you're reading George Orwell, you're never thinking about how he's writing. You're just thinking about what he's saying, and that's designedly so. And in the famous pieces of advice that he gives to writers in his most famous essay, Politics in the English Language, most of these pieces of advice he gives, which are towards austerity, towards short words where long words will do,
Yeah.
towards refraining from using foreign words. Nabokov breaks almost all of these rules on almost every single page.
It's a just great, just to interject there, great that you mentioned it's like a window pane, the false azure in the window pane
Yeah.
of pale
Right.
fire, that being the whole idea of Nabokov. He can do that, whereas for Orwell it's just looking through the window pane,
Right.
whereas it seems like for Nabokov it's looking at the window and seeing the reflection behind you. But
Actually,
continue.
Orwell's agenda is rather close to my agenda in translating the prose of the Hebrew Bible.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, but it is just because it's interesting that they both have a similar relationship towards totalitarianism. I suppose not Nabokov was more of a liberal individualist, and George Orwell was a democratic socialist. So there's differences there, but in their opposition to totalitarianism and in the way they both thought that literature was an important, if not the most important means of combating it. Um, yeah, it's just I find it interesting that for Nabokov you can subvert Nazism just by naming a shade of blue.
Yeah.
Whereas for Orwell you have to, it's explicit. You must he's writing using the words Nazism and communism and
Right.
these abstractions, which Nabokov seems quite impatient with. He doesn't really play any ideological games. It seems to be much more, no, just concentrate on the immediate experience, and through that you will have a subversive effect.
That's aptly put. And
Mm.
there's a wonderful anecdote about Nabokov. When he came to the United States, he was introduced to Mary McCarthy. And of course, like well, I should say most American intellectuals, especially literary intellectuals at the time, she was very political and on the left. So she said, I am interested in meeting you, Mr. Nabokov, as a white Russian. He said, Madam, I am not a white Russian. He said, are you a democratic socialist? No, madam, I'm not a democratic socialist. And she went through another 3 or so ideological options. And then he said, Madam, I am a Russian liberal.
I hope you enjoyed that video about Vladimir Nabokov and George Orwell and such. More such details can be found in the full interview below. And just to remind you one more time that be patron.